One signature was about to cost Ainsley Brooks $40 million, and the only person in the room who knew it was refilling his water glass. In the high-stakes world of Manhattan mergers, the person serving the steak is usually invisible, a ghost in a waistcoat. But tonight, at the most exclusive table in New York's Obsidian Room, that ghost was about to scream. It wasn't just a dinner, it was a battlefield. And when the arrogant CEO told the waitress to stick to the menu and leave the thinking to the men, he didn't realize he had just handed a loaded gun to the woman who used to be the sharpest legal mind in Madrid. This is the story of how a spilled drop of wine and a missing clause changed everything. Rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Obsidian Room, blurring the lights of Manhattan into streaks of charcoal and gold. Inside, the air smelled of aged truffle oil, mahogany, and the specific, metallic scent of anxiety that radiates from men about to lose a fortune. Meredith Solis adjusted her black waistcoat in the reflection of the brass espresso machine. Her feet throbbed. It was hour 10 of a double shift. To the patrons of the Obsidian Room, Meredith was not a 34-year-old woman with a master's in international contract law from the University of Complutense in Madrid. She was not a mother fighting a custody battle that required expensive American lawyers. She was simply server number 4, a vessel for carrying ribeyes and clearing crumbs. "Table 9 is yours, Mera," the maitre d'honneur whispered, sliding a leather-bound wine list into her hand. "VIP. Ainsley Brooks. He's closing the Kovich deal tonight. If he asks for the moon, you find a ladder." Meredith nodded, her face a mask of professional detachment. She knew the name. Everyone who read the Financial Times knew Ainsley Brooks. He was the CEO of Brooks Vargas Logistics, a shipping titan known for hostile takeovers and a personality that could curdle milk. He was currently trying to acquire Kovich Systems, a tech firm specializing in AI logistics, to save his bleeding stock price. Meredith approached Table 9. It was the power table, situated in a semi-private alcove. 3 men sat there, occupying space with the aggressive posture of apex predators. Ainsley Brooks sat in the center. He was a man composed of sharp angles, a jawline that could cut glass, a bespoke suit that cost more than Meredith's yearly rent, and eyes that scanned the room without truly seeing anyone in it. To his left was his tired-looking general counsel, a man named Timothy Weathers who looked like he hadn't slept since the recession. Across from them sat Jonas Kovich, the target. Kovich was younger, wearing a hoodie under a blazer, looking bored and dangerous. "Sparkling. No ice. And bring the 82 Latour, not the 86. I know you people try to swap them," Ainsley barked, without looking up from the documents spread across the pristine white tablecloth. "Certainly, sir," Meredith said, her voice a soft, practiced alto. Ainsley waved a hand dismissively, his gold cufflinks flashing under the recessed lighting. "And hurry up, we're on a timeline here." Meredith retreated. She was used to this. In Spain, she had negotiated trade deals with diplomats. Here, she was invisible. She moved to the cellar, retrieved the Chateau Latour, 1982, and returned. As she performed the ritual of opening the bottle, presenting the label, cutting the foil, wiping the rim, she couldn't help but overhear. "The valuation is firm, Jonas," Ainsley said, tapping a thick stack of paper. 300 million. Cash and stock. You won't get a better offer from the Germans." Jonas Kovich swirled his empty glass. "It's not the money, Ainsley. It's the autonomy. I built Kovich Systems from a garage in Seattle. I don't want your board of dinosaurs telling me how to write code." "You'll have autonomy," Ainsley lied. The tone was smooth, buttery, and utterly false. Meredith recognized it instantly. It was the tone of a man who plans to gut a company the moment the ink is dry. Look at the draft. Section 4, paragraph C. Operational independence. It's all there. Meredith poured a taste for Ainsley. He didn't check it. He just gestured for her to fill the glasses. As she poured Jonas's glass, Ainsley snapped his fingers. "Honey, easy on the pour. We need to read, not nap." Meredith paused, the bottle hovering perfectly still. "My name is Meredith, sir." Ainsley finally looked at her. His eyes were cold, blue ice. He smirked, a jagged thing that didn't reach his eyes. "I didn't ask for your biography, Meredith. I asked for wine. Pour it, then vanish." Timothy, the lawyer, looked down at his plate, embarrassed. Jonas Kovich raised an eyebrow, watching the interaction with amusement. Meredith finished the pour with surgical precision, not spilling a drop. "Enjoy," she said, her voice cool. She stepped back into the shadows, but she didn't vanish. She watched. She watched because she had to know. She watched because the document sitting near Ainsley's elbow was titled Definitive Merger Agreement, and even from 3 feet away, the formatting looked rushed. "Let's get this done," Ainsley said, loosening his toy. "Timothy, give Jonas the pen. We sign, we celebrate, we go home." "I haven't reviewed the final amendments on the IP transfer," Jonas said, hesitating. "It's standard boilerplate." Ainsley laughed, a booming sound that made other tables turn. Timothy wrote it himself. Unless you don't trust the finest legal mind Harvard produced in 1998. Timothy forced a smile. "It's standard, Jonas. All intellectual property assigns to the parent company, Brooks Vargas, upon closing." Meredith moved in to clear the appetizer plates. As she reached across the table to remove a bread basket, her eyes locked onto the open page of the contract. It was page 42. Article 7. Intellectual property and proprietary rights. Her eyes scanned the text automatically. It was a reflex she couldn't kill. Years of proofreading contracts for the Madrid Chamber of Commerce had hardwired her brain to spot inconsistencies. Clause 7.2. A. Assignment. Clause 7.2. B. Exclusions. She froze. Her hand hovered over the bread basket for a fraction of a second too long. Ainsley noticed. "What is it now? Do you need a map to find the kitchen?" Meredith pulled the basket away, clutching it against her apron. She looked at Ainsley, then at the document, then back to Ainsley. The mistake was glaring. It was catastrophic. It was the kind of error that gets junior associates fired and partners sued for malpractice. "Sir," Meredith said. She shouldn't speak. She needed the tips. She needed this job. But the lawyer in her was screaming. "What?" Ainsley snapped. "The contract," she said quietly. "What about it?" "You might want to read clause 7.2 again before Mr. Kovich signs." The table went silent. The ambient noise of the restaurant, the clinking silverware, the jazz piano, seemed to drop away. Ainsley slowly turned his entire body toward her. His face wasn't red. It was pale with fury. "Excuse me?" "Clause 7.2, Meredith repeated, her heart hammering against her ribs. "It defines the excluded assets. The syntax is ambiguous. The way it's written, the patent portfolio for the AI navigation system is listed under the exclusions, not the transfers." Silence. Then Ainsley laughed. It was a wet, ugly sound. "Did you hear that, Jonas? The waitress is giving us legal advice. Did you get a law degree with your apron, sweetheart?" "Actually," Meredith said, her spine straightening, "I have a master's from Complutance, and I practiced corporate law for 8 years before I moved here. And if you signed that, you are paying $300 million for an empty shell. Mr. Kovich will keep his patents, and you will own a company that has no right to use its own software." Ainsley slammed his hand on the table. "Get the manager, now." Timothy, the lawyer, looked panic-stricken. He grabbed the document and pulled it closer, squinting under the dim light. "Ainsley," Timothy whispered. "Shut up, Tim. I want this woman fired. I want her gone," Ainsley yelled, pointing a finger at Meredith's face. "You insolent, uneducated—" "Ainsley!" Timothy's voice cracked. It was a high-pitched squeak. "What?" Timothy looked up, his face grey. "She's right." The silence that followed was heavier than the oak table they sat at. Jonas Kovich, who had been leaning back in his chair, suddenly sat up straight. He reached for the document, but Timothy held it down with a trembling hand. "Let me see that," Jonas said, his voice sharp. "One moment," Ainsley hissed, snatching the paper from his own lawyer. He read the clause. His eyes darted back and forth, reading the legalese. "Excluding all assets listed in Schedule B, including but not limited to real estate holdings, company vehicles, and proprietary algorithms developed prior to January 2024. Ainsley's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The "and" should have been an "or the comma should have been a semicolon. The grammar linked the algorithms to the excluded assets. It was a syntactical disaster. Meredith stood there, clutching the breadbasket, waiting for the explosion. Ainsley looked up at her. The arrogance was still there, but it was fractured, revealing a deep, terrifying panic beneath. He didn't apologize. Men like Ainsley Brooks never apologized to staff. "You," Ainsley pointed at her again, but the finger was shaking slightly. "How did you see that?" "I read fast," Meredith said calmly, "and the lighting is actually quite good here." Jonas Kovich started laughing. It wasn't a mocking laugh. It was genuine, delighted laughter. "Oh, this is rich. This is beautiful. You were about to buy my company and let me keep the product? Ainsley, you shark. You were going to swallow a poison pill you made yourself." Ainsley ignored Jonas. He turned on Timothy. "You incompetent hack. I pay your firm $2,000 an hour. 2,000. And a waitress has to save me from financial suicide." "It was a draft error," Timothy stammered, sweating profusely. "The associates. The formatting software." "Get out," Ainsley said. The volume was low, which made it scarier. "Get out of my sight, Timothy. Go back to the office and don't stop running until you hit Jersey." Timothy Weathers, general counsel, gathered his briefcase with fumbling hands and fled the restaurant, leaving his half-eaten steak behind. Now, there were only 3 people at the table: the billionaire, the genius rival, and the server. "Well," Jonas said, picking up his wine glass, "that complicates things. Since the contract is void, I suppose the deal is off for tonight." "The deal is not off," Ainsley gritted out. He looked at Meredith. Do you have a pen?" Meredith pulled a cheap Bic pen from her apron pocket. "Yes." "Sit down," Ainsley commanded. Meredith blinked. "Sir, I can't. I'm on shift. My manager, I will buy this restaurant and turn it into a parking lot if you don't sit down," Ainsley said. He wasn't joking. Meredith looked toward the kitchen. Henri, the maître d'hôtel, was watching from afar, looking terrified. He gave her a tiny, frantic nod. "Do whatever he says." Meredith sat in Timothy's empty chair. The leather was still warm. She felt ridiculous. She was wearing her uniform, a white button-down, a black vest, and sensible non-slip shoes, sitting next to a man wearing a Rolex Daytona. "Fix it," Ainsley said, sliding the document toward her. "I am not your lawyer, Mr. Brooks," Meredith said, her voice steady. "I am a server. If I touch this document, I am engaging in the unauthorized practice of law in the state of New York. I could be deported." She was bluffing slightly about the deportation, but she needed leverage. She wasn't going to fix a $300 million mistake for a 20% tip. Ainsley stared at her. He assessed her. For the first time, he saw her not as a prop, but as an adversary. "What do you want?" "I want to go back to work so I don't lose my job," Meredith said, standing up. $5,000, Ainsley said. Meredith paused. 5,000 was 2 months of rent and childcare. But she looked at the document. This was worth millions to him. "No," she said. 10,000, Ainsley countered immediately. Jonas Kovich whistled. "She's good, Ainsley. I think she knows you're desperate." Meredith looked Ainsley in the eye. "Mr. Brooks, this isn't just a typo. Clause 7.2 acts as a trigger for the indemnity cap in Section 12. If you fix the IP issue without adjusting the indemnity, Mr. Kovich can still sue you for diminished value post-merger if the stock drops. You have 2 holes in this contract, not 1. Ainsley went dead silent. Jonas stopped smiling. "You saw that too?" Jonas asked, his voice lower. "I saw it when I brought the appetizers," Meredith admitted. Ainsley took a deep breath. He took a sip of his wine. He placed the glass down. $50,000, cash, tonight, and a job. Meredith's heart stopped. "What kind of job?" "Consultant, legal strategy, whatever you want to call it. You come to my office tomorrow at 8 a.m. You fix this deal tonight, right now, on this table, and I write you a personal check." Meredith looked at the pen in her hand. She looked at the smudges of grease on her apron. She thought about her daughter, Leo, sleeping at her neighbor's apartment because she couldn't afford a babysitter. She thought about the law degree gathering dust in a drawer. "I need a linen napkin," Meredith said. "What?" Ainsley asked. "The paper is too crowded to mark up clearly. I need a linen napkin and a black marker. I will redraft the clause structure on the napkin, and you can staple it to the agreement as an addendum, initialed by both parties." Ainsley snapped his fingers at a passing busboy. "Marker. Napkin. Now!" The busboy scrambled. 2 minutes later, Meredith Solis was leaning over the table, the scent of expensive beef and cologne filling her nose. She smoothed out the white linen napkin. With the black, permanent marker, she began to write. Her handwriting was elegant, sharp, and decisive. Clause 7.2, revised. Notwithstanding the foregoing, all intellectual property, registered or unregistered, including the Kovich algorithms, shall be irrevocably assigned to the acquirer. She wrote for 10 minutes. The restaurant buzzed around them, but at table 9 the world had shrunk to the tip of her marker. Ainsley watched her hand with the intensity of a hawk. Jonas watched with admiration. "Done," Meredith said, capping the marker. She pushed the napkin toward them. "Sign the cloth, staple it. It's legally binding as long as there is intent." Ainsley read the napkin. He read it twice. He looked at Jonas. "It's watertight," Jonas said, sounding almost disappointed. She closed the loophole. Ainsley took the pen. He signed the napkin. He pushed it to Jonas. Jonas signed. The deal was done. Ainsley let out a long breath, slumped back in his chair, and looked at Meredith. "You're terrifying." "I'm efficient," Meredith corrected. She stood up, brushing a crumb off her vest. "I'll go get your check, gentlemen." "Sit down," Ainsley said, his voice softer this time. "We aren't done." "I have other tables, sir." "I bought the tables," Ainsley said. "I bought the whole night's seating. Henry is clearing the room as we speak." Meredith looked around. Indeed, the maitre d' was gently guiding confused couples toward the door, comping their meals. The restaurant was emptying. "Why?" Meredith asked. "Because?" Ainsley reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a checkbook. I need to know who you really are, and I need to know why a woman who can draft a merger on a napkin is serving me steak. Meredith sat back down. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her trembling. My name is Meredith Solis. My husband, my ex-husband, is Antonio Vargas. Ainsley's pen froze over the check. He looked up, his face draining of color. Vargas, Ainsley whispered, as in Brooks Vargas Logistics, my partner's son. The same, Meredith said, her eyes hard. The man who ruined my life, the man who ensured I couldn't get a law license in this country, the man I am currently suing for custody of our daughter. Ainsley stared at her. The silence stretched, taut as a wire. You're the Spanish witch? Ainsley asked, using the nickname the tabloids had given Antonio's mysterious ex-wife. I am, Meredith said. And you, Mr. Brooks, are the only man Antonio fears, which is why I fixed your contract. Ainsley slowly ripped the check out of the book. He didn't look at the amount. He slid it across the table. This is just a retainer, Ainsley said. Tell me everything. The next morning, the glass doors of the Brooks Vargas Tower reflected a different woman. Meredith Solis had spent a significant portion of Ainsley's $50,000 check before the sun even rose. The server's uniform was in the trash. In its place, she wore a charcoal wool suit that was tailored to within an inch of its life, and 4-inch stilettos that clicked against the marble lobby floor like gunshots. She approached the security desk at 7:55 a.m. ID, the guard grunted, not looking up. Meredith Solis, I have a meeting with Ainsley Brooks. The guard laughed. Sure, and I'm having lunch with the president. Get lost, lady. Deliveries are in the back. Call him, Meredith said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried the frosty command of a woman who had once managed million-euro mergers. I'm not calling Mr. Brooks for a problem. The voice boomed from the elevator bank. Ainsley Brooks strode across the lobby, flanked by 2 assistants who looked like they were trying to calculate the wind speed of his stride. He stopped in front of the desk. Mr. Brooks, the guard stammered, standing up so fast his chair knocked over. This woman claims— She is not a woman, Ainsley corrected, his voice dangerously low. She is the new director of strategic acquisition. And if you make her wait 30 seconds, you're fired. If you make her wait a minute, I'm deporting you to New Jersey. Ainsley gestured to the open elevator. After you, Miss Solis. The elevator ride to the 50th floor was silent. Ainsley watched the numbers climb. You spent the money well. You look like a killer. I am a killer, Meredith replied, looking straight ahead. I just haven't had a weapon in a long time. Good, because you're going to need it. I called an emergency board meeting. They know I fired Timothy. They smell blood in the water. They think I've lost my mind. The elevator dinged. They walked into a conference room that cost more than Meredith's entire education. The table was made of black glass. Seated around it were 12 people, 10 men, 2 women, all staring at Meredith with a mix of curiosity and disdain. Who is this? Asked a man at the head of the table. This was Grant Sterling. No, wait, not Sterling. Grant Calloway. Grant was the senior VP of operations. He was 50, tanned, and had the teeth of a game show host. He was also Antonio Vargas's spy on the board. This is Meredith Solis, Ainsley announced, taking his seat at the head. She is replacing Timothy as lead counsel on the Kovich merger. The room erupted. Is this a joke? Grant stood up, slamming a folder shut. Ainsley, we are a Fortune 500 company. You can't just drag her. Who even is she? I've never heard of her firm. I don't have a firm, Meredith said, placing her leather portfolio on the table. She didn't sit. She stood, forcing them to look up at her. I was freelancing. Freelancing? Grant scoffed. Doing what? Traffic court? Actually, Meredith said, opening her portfolio and sliding a single sheet of paper toward Grant. I was reviewing the liability clauses on the shipment of heavy machinery to the port of Bilbao. The shipment you authorized last week. Grant frowned. He picked up the paper. What is this? That is a citation from the European Union Trade Commission, Meredith explained coolly. You declared the cargo as industrial parts to avoid the tariff, but under Article 45 of the EU Import Code, engines with that specific horsepower are classified as military-grade components if the buyer is a defense contractor, which your buyer is. The room went dead silent. So, Grant said, though his tan seemed to be fading. So, Meredith continued, the fine for misclassifying military hardware isn't a fee, Grant. It's prison. Mandatory minimum of 5 years in a Spanish federal facility. I drafted a memo this morning to reroute the shipment to Morocco before it enters Spanish waters. I saved the company $12 million in fines, and I saved you from sharing a cell with a man named El Toro. Grant stared at the paper. His hands were shaking. He looked at Ainsley. Ainsley was leaning back, a small, satisfied smile playing on his lips. She's been employed here for 20 minutes, Grant, and she already saved your ass. Sit down. Grant sat down. Now, Meredith said, taking her seat at Ainsley's right hand. Let's talk about the Kovich merger. Timothy's draft was garbage. We're starting over. For the next 4 hours, Meredith dissected the company's legal strategy with the precision of a surgeon. She knew case law that the junior associates had to look up on their phones. She cited precedents from 1950s maritime law that allowed them to bypass zoning restrictions. She was brilliant. She was unstoppable. By lunch, the hostility in the room had evaporated, replaced by a fearful respect. As the meeting adjourned, Ainsley signaled for Meredith to stay. You did your homework, Ainsley said, pouring himself a water. How did you know about Grant's shipment? I served Grant dinner 3 weeks ago, Meredith said, organizing her notes. He was drunk. He was bragging about screwing the Spanish customs agents to his mistress. I have a good memory. Ainsley laughed. Remind me never to eat in a restaurant again. You're hired. Officially. Base salary of $300,000. Bonuses based on performance. I want $500, Meredith said without looking up. Ainsley paused. You're pushing it. I have a daughter to support, and I have legal fees, expensive ones. Fine, $450. But you handle the Antonio situation. Meredith froze. She looked at Ainsley. What situation? My partner, Antonio Vargas. Your ex-husband, Ainsley said. He's on his way here. He heard I hired a new legal shark, and he wants to vet you. He doesn't know it's you yet. Meredith felt the blood drain from her face. She hadn't seen Antonio in 2 years, not since the night he threw her out of their penthouse and told her she'd never practice law in America. He's coming here? He's in the elevator, Ainsley said, checking his watch. ETA, 2 minutes. Meredith stood up, panic flaring in her chest. I can't see him, not yet. I'm not ready. You are ready, Ainsley said, standing up and walking around the table. He grabbed her shoulders. His grip was firm. Look at me. You aren't the waitress anymore. You aren't the immigrant wife he bullied. You are the woman who brought Grant Calloway to his knees in 30 seconds. You are the smartest person in this building. You don't know him, Meredith whispered. He's cruel, Ainsley. He will take my daughter. Let him try, Ainsley said. He's walking into my office, and in this office I am God, and you are my angel of death. Now fix your hair. Here he comes. The The doors to the conference room burst open. Antonio Vargas was a beautiful man. That was the trap. He had dark, wavy hair, eyes the color of brandy, and a smile that could convince a nun to sin. He wore a navy suit that cost more than Ainsley's car. He walked with the easy confidence of a man who had never been told no in his entire life. "Ainsley," Antonio boomed, spreading his arms. "I hear we have a new genius on the payroll. I had to come see for myself. Timothy was crying in the lobby when I walked in. Hilarious." Ainsley didn't smile. He leaned against the glass table, crossing his arms. "Hello, Antonio." "So, where is he?" Antonio asked, looking around the room. "Where's the new shark?" Ainsley gestured slightly to his right. Meredith turned from the window, where she had been pretending to look at the skyline. She faced her ex-husband. Antonio's smile froze. It didn't fade slowly. It simply vanished, replaced by a look of utter, bewildering shock. He blinked, as if trying to clear a hallucination. "Mera?" he whispered. "Hello, Antonio," Meredith said. Her voice was steady, anchored by the heavy wool of her suit and the check in her bank account. What is this?" Antonio looked at Ainsley, then back to Meredith. A laugh bubbled up in his throat, nervous and sharp. "Ainsley, is this a prank? You hired the maid?" "I hired the lawyer who fixed the Kovich deal," Ainsley said coldly. "The deal your father was desperate for us to close." "She's not a lawyer," Antonio snapped, his charm evaporating instantly. He took a step toward Meredith. "She's a fraud. Her degree is Spanish. It's toilet paper here. She waits tables, Ainsley. She scrubs floors." "Not anymore," Meredith said. She took a step forward, meeting him in the middle of the room. "I am the director of strategic acquisition, which means technically I outrank you, Antonio, since you're just the vice president of special projects." Antonio's face turned a violent shade of red. "You think you can walk in here, into my company?" "It's a partnership," Ainsley interjected, "and I own 51%. I hire who I want." Antonio ignored Ainsley. He loomed over Meredith. He was used to her shrinking. He was used to her apologizing. "You are violating the custody agreement," Antonio hissed. "You are supposed to be destitute. The judge gave you Leo only because I allowed it, because I didn't want the hassle. But if you think you can play corporate executive, I will bury you. I will prove you are unfit. I will take her, Meredith. I will take Leo and move her to Madrid, and you will never see her again." It was the nightmare scenario, the threat that had kept her silent for 2 years. Meredith felt the old fear rising, the trembling in her hands. She looked at Antonio's eyes, cruel, empty. Then she thought about the napkin. She thought about the look on Grant Calloway's face. She thought about the $450,000. "Go ahead," Meredith said. Antonio blinked. "What?" "Sue me," Meredith said. She smiled, and it was a smile she had learned from Ainsley. "Take me to court, Antonio, please, because now I can afford a lawyer. In fact, I can afford the best lawyers in the city, and I know where the bodies are buried." Antonio stepped back. "What are you talking about?" "The shell companies in Panama," Meredith said softly. "The ones you used to siphon money from your father's accounts. I did the bookkeeping for our household, remember? I saw the wire transfers. I have copies." The room went so quiet you could hear the hum of the HVAC system. Ainsley straightened up, his eyes widening. He hadn't known this part. "You stole from the firm?" Ainsley asked, his voice deadly quiet. Antonio spun around. "She's lying. She's a crazy, bitter ex-wife." "I have the account numbers," Meredith said, looking at her manicured nails, "and the routing codes. If you file a motion for custody, Antonio, if you even look at my daughter sideways. I will hand that file to the IRS, and then I will hand it to your father." Antonio Vargas was a bully, and like all bullies, he crumbled when hit back. He looked between Ainsley, who looked ready to kill him, and Meredith, who looked ready to destroy him. You wouldn't," Antonio stammered. "Try me," Meredith said. Antonio glared at her with pure hatred, but he backed away. He adjusted his jacket, trying to regain some shred of dignity. "This isn't over," he spat. "You made a mistake coming here, Mera. This is a big boy's game. You're going to get hurt." "Get out of my office," Ainsley said. Antonio turned and stormed out, slamming the glass doors so hard they rattled in their frames. Ainsley let out a low whistle. "Remind me never to piss you off." Meredith let out a breath she had been holding for 5 minutes. Her knees felt weak. She grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. "Are you okay?" Ainsley asked, his tone surprisingly gentle. "I just declared war on the Vargas family," Meredith said, her voice shaking slightly. "Antonio is stupid, but his father, Ricardo Vargas, he is a monster. He will come for me." "Let him come," Ainsley said. He walked over to the minibar and poured 2 scotches. He handed one to her. "You have leverage now, and you have me." Meredith took the glass. "Why? Why are you helping me? It's not just about the contract." Ainsley took a sip, watching her over the rim of his glass. "Because, Meredith, I've been trying to push the Vargas family out of this company for 10 years. They are corrupt, lazy leeches. But I never had the ammunition." He clinked his glass against hers. "You aren't just my lawyer," Ainsley said, a predatory gleam in his eyes. "You are my silver bullet. We are going to take this company back. All of it." Meredith looked at the amber liquid. She realized then that she hadn't just escaped a trap. She had walked into a war, but this time she was a general, not a victim. "To the war," Meredith said. "To the war," Ainsley agreed. Just then, Meredith's phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from an unknown number. "Nice suit. But did you check the brakes on your car?" Meredith stared at the screen. "What is it?" Ainsley asked. Meredith showed him the phone. Ainsley's face hardened. He picked up his desk phone and dialed a number. "Security. Send a team to the parking garage. Secure Ms. Solis's vehicle, and get the driver ready. No one in this office drives themselves home from today on. Understood?" He slammed the phone down. "He plays dirty," Ainsley said. "So do I," Meredith replied. "I need to pick up my daughter. Now." "I'm coming with you," Ainsley said, grabbing his coat. "You don't have to. He threatened your car. That means he's watching. If he sees you with me, if he sees you under the protection of the CEO, he will hesitate. Let's go." As they walked out of the office, side by side, Meredith felt a strange sensation. For the first time in years, she wasn't walking alone. She was walking into the fire, yes, but she was walking with a dragon. For 3 weeks, Meredith Solis lived in the eye of the hurricane. It was a deceptively calm place. She had an office with a view of the Hudson, a salary that allowed her to move Leo into a secure apartment building with a doorman and a bodyguard named Lou, who looked like a vending machine with legs. She was winning. The Kovich merger had closed seamlessly, sending Brooks Vargas stock soaring by 18%. Ainsley treated her as an equal, and the office whispered her name with a mix of fear and reverence. But the Vargas family did not lose gracefully. They didn't fight with contracts, they fought with mud. It happened on a Tuesday night at the Vanguard Charity Gala. It was the premier event of the season, a black tie affair held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Ainsley had insisted she attend. "It's your victory lap," he had said. Wear something that screams, "I own this place." Meredith wore emerald green silk, sharp and backless. She walked into the great hall on Ainsley's arm, feeling, for the first time in years, untouchable. Then the flashbulbs started. They were brighter than usual, more aggressive. "Miss Solis! Miss Solis!" A reporter from a tabloid rag shoved a microphone past security. "Is it true you solicited clients at the Obsidian Room? How much for the special menu?" Meredith froze. The blood drained from her face. "Excuse me?" "The photos," another photographer shouted. "We have the photos." Phones buzzed in pockets all around the room. The murmuring started. A low, buzzing sound like a hive of angry bees. People were looking at their screens, then looking at Meredith, then whispering behind their hands. Ainsley grabbed a phone from a nearby guest, a board member named Joyce, and looked at the screen. It was a hit piece on the City Inquisitor. The headline screamed, "From apron to assets, the secret nightlife of Brooks's newest director." Below it were grainy, zoomed-in photos of Meredith at the restaurant. In one, she was leaning close to a male customer to hear his order over the noise. The angle made it look intimate. In another, she was accepting a cash tip, but the caption claimed it was payment for services rendered. The article was a masterpiece of fiction. It claimed she had been fired from law firms in Madrid for inappropriate conduct, a lie, and that she had slept her way into Ainsley Brooks's office, a bigger lie. "This is garbage," Ainsley growled, his hand tightening into a fist. "Don't look at them, Meredith." But she couldn't help it. She saw the faces of the Manhattan elite, people she had just been shaking hands with, curling into sneers. They didn't care about the truth. They loved the scandal. "Well, well." The crowd parted. A man approached. He was older than Antonio, with the same predator eyes, but none of the boyish charm. He leaned on a cane with a silver handle, not because he needed it, but because it looked like a weapon. It was Hector Vargas, the patriarch. "A tragic display," Hector said, his voice like gravel. He didn't look at Meredith. He looked at Ainsley. "I told you, Ainsley. You invite the gutter into the boardroom and you get the stench." "You did this," Meredith said. Her voice was shaking, not with fear, but with a rage so hot it felt like it was burning her throat. "You paid them." Hector finally looked at her. His eyes were dead. "I don't pay tabloids, Ms. Solis. I merely ensure transparency. The shareholders have a right to know who is managing their assets. A woman of questionable virtue is a liability." "She is the best lawyer in this company," Ainsley snapped, stepping between them. "She is worth 10 of you, Hector." "The stock is dropping," Hector said, checking his watch. "After-hours trading is down 4% since the article dropped 10 minutes ago. Tomorrow morning, I am calling a vote of no confidence. Not for you, Ainsley. For her. If you don't fire her by 9 a.m., I will mobilize the board to remove you as CEO for negligence in hiring." Hector leaned in close to Meredith, whispering so only she could hear. "Go back to serving drinks, little girl, or I will make sure the next article is about your daughter's school." The mention of Leo shattered Meredith's composure. The room spun. The camera flashes felt like physical blows. She pulled her arm away from Ainsley and ran. She ran past the Egyptian statues, past the security guards, and out into the cold New York night. The next morning, the conference room at Brooks Vargas was a funeral parlor. The rain beat against the glass, matching the mood inside. Ainsley sat at the head of the table, looking like he hadn't slept. He was unshaven, his tie loose. Opposite him sat Hector Vargas, flanked by Antonio and 3 other board members who were loyal to the Vargas money. They looked smug. They had the votes. "It's 9:05 a.m., Hector said, tapping his cane on the floor. Where is she? Is she packing her desk? She's late, Ainsley said, rubbing his temples. Give her a moment. She's not coming, Antonio laughed. He was enjoying this. She's hiding, probably halfway to the airport. I demand a vote, Hector said. Motion to terminate Meredith Solis effectively immediately for cause. Conduct detrimental to the company image. Seconded, said Grant Calloway, who had apparently forgotten who saved him from prison. All in favor? Hector asked. 5 hands went up. It was enough. Motion carried, Hector smiled. Now Ainsley, regarding your position. The heavy oak doors swung open. Meredith Solis walked in. She wasn't wearing a suit. She wasn't wearing the shame of the previous night. She was wearing a white dress, pristine and sharp, looking like an avenging angel. Behind her walked 2 people, Lou the bodyguard and a young man in a hoodie, Jonas Kovic. You're fired, Antonio shouted, standing up. Security, get her out. Sit down, Antonio, Meredith said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it had a peculiar resonance. It was the voice of a judge delivering a death sentence. You have no standing here, Hector spat. The board has voted. The board voted to fire an employee, Meredith said, placing a thick stack of files on the table. But you can't fire a trustee. What are you talking about? Hector narrowed his eyes. Meredith turned to Jonas. Mr. Kovic, would you like to explain the Solis protocol? Jonas Kovic grinned. He hated the Vargas family almost as much as Meredith did. Gladly. When Meredith corrected the contract on the napkin, she added a clause I insisted on. Clause 14, Section B, the Intellectual Property Integrity Trust. Jonas tapped the table. I didn't trust you guys not to sell my tech to the Chinese or the Russians, so the IP, the algorithms that make this company worth billions, isn't owned by Brooks Vargas directly. It's held in a trust. And the sole trustee, the only person with the digital key to unlock the code, is the Director of Strategic Acquisition. Hector went pale. We'll just appoint a new director. Ah, Meredith interjected. The clause specifies the director by name, Meredith Solis. If I am terminated without gross criminal misconduct, proven in a court of law, the license dissolves. The IP reverts to Jonas, and you lose everything. Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Ainsley started to smile. He covered his mouth with his hand, but his eyes were dancing. So, Meredith said, leaning on the table, if you fire me, the stock goes to 0. Today. This is blackmail, Hector roared, slamming his cane on the glass. No, Hector, that was the appetizer, Meredith said, cold as ice. This is the main course. She opened the file she had placed on the table. She slid a document toward Hector. I didn't sleep last night, Meredith said. I went through the special projects files that Antonio was so worried about. I found the shell companies, but I found something else. I found the insurance policies. Hector's hand stopped halfway to the paper. He froze. You have been insuring your cargo ships for double their value, Meredith explained to the room, her voice ringing clear. And interestingly, 4 of those ships have sunk in calm waters off the coast of Brazil in the last 5 years. The Santa Maria, the Red Star, the Orion, and the Vesper. The board members gasped. Insurance fraud on that scale was federal prison time. It was RICO territory. I have the manifest logs, Meredith continued. The ships were empty when they sank. You sold the cargo on the black market, sank the empty ships, claimed the insurance, and pocketed both checks. It's a brilliant scheme, Hector. It's also worth about 20 years in a maximum security penitentiary. Hector Vargas slumped in his chair. The cane slipped from his hand and clattered to the floor. He looked suddenly old, fragile. Antonio looked at his father, then at Meredith. "Dad, is that true?" "Shut up," Hector whispered. Meredith looked around the table. "I have already sent copies of this to a secure server. If I am fired, or if another tabloid article appears about me or my daughter, the file goes to the FBI, the DOJ, and the SEC. She turned to Ainsley. "I believe there is a new motion on the floor." Ainsley stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He looked at Hector with pure contempt. "Motion to remove Hector Vargas and Antonio Vargas from the board, effective immediately," Ainsley said, "and to buy out their shares at the current market value, minus the cost of the internal investigation." "Seconded," Meredith said. "All in favor?" Ainsley asked. Grant Calloway's hand shot up first, then the others. Even the Vargas loyalists knew a sinking ship when they saw one. Hector didn't vote. He just stared at the table, his empire dissolving because he had underestimated a waitress. "Get out," Ainsley said softly. Antonio tried to speak, but Hector silenced him with a look. The old man stood up, shaking. He didn't pick up his cane. He walked out of the room, leaning on his son for support, broken. When the door clicked shut, the room exhaled. Jonas Kovic high-fived Meredith. "That was metal. Pure metal." Ainsley walked over to Meredith. He looked at her with an expression that went beyond professional admiration. "You didn't just save the company," Ainsley said. "You cleaned the house." "I told you," Meredith said, her hands finally starting to tremble as the adrenaline faded. "I know where the bodies are buried." "What now?" Ainsley asked. Meredith looked out the window. The rain had stopped. A single ray of sunlight was piercing through the clouds, hitting the skyscrapers of Manhattan. "Now," Meredith said, smoothing her skirt. "I have a lot of work to do, and I believe Table 9 needs a new contract drawn up for the Tokyo expansion." "I'll have someone bring you a coffee," Ainsley said. "And Meredith?" "Yes?" "No more napkins." Meredith smiled. It was a real smile this time. "Agreed. Only bond paper from now on." The snow fell softly on the steps of the New York State Supreme Court, covering the grime of the city in a blanket of pristine white. It was 3 months after the boardroom coup, and the world had changed. Meredith Solis stood at the bottom of the steps, wrapping her camel hair coat tighter against the chill. She wasn't waiting for a bus anymore. She was waiting for a driver. But first, she had to watch him leave. The heavy doors opened, and Antonio Vargas emerged. He looked thinner. The arrogance that had once worn him like a second skin was gone, replaced by the twitchy paranoia of a man under federal investigation. He was flanked by a frantic-looking immigration lawyer, not the high-priced corporate counsel he used to command. He stopped when he saw Meredith. For a moment, the old sneer threatened to appear, but it died in his throat. "You won," Antonio said, his voice hollow. "Are you happy, Mera? You destroyed my father. You destroyed the legacy." "Your father destroyed himself when he decided to sink ships for profit," Meredith replied calmly. "I just turned on the lights." Antonio shifted his weight. He was holding a one-way ticket to Madrid. The deal Ainsley had cut with the district attorney was simple. The Vargas family leaves the country and forfeits their assets in the US, or the evidence of the insurance fraud goes to a grand jury. They chose exile over prison. "And Leo?" Antonio asked, looking down at his expensive Italian shoes, which were now scuffed. "She's safe," Meredith said. "She's enrolled in the prep school you said was too elite for a waitress's daughter. She plays the cello now. She's happy, Antonio, because she doesn't have to be afraid of your temper anymore." Antonio looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in years. He saw the diamond studs in her ears, the confidence in her posture, the peace in her eyes. "I should have signed that contract," he muttered, a bitter laugh escaping him. "The one on the napkin. If I had just let you fix it and kept my mouth shut." "You never could keep your mouth shut, Antonio," Meredith said. "Goodbye." He lingered for a second, a ghost of a past life, and then walked down the steps toward a waiting taxi. He didn't look back. A black Bentley pulled up to the curb a moment later. The window rolled down, revealing Ainsley Brooks. He wasn't wearing a tie. It was Saturday after all. "Is it done?" Ainsley asked. Meredith climbed into the warm leather interior. "He signed the full custody release. It's over. He's gone." Ainsley nodded to the driver, and the car merged into the traffic. "Good. Now we can focus on the important things." "Like the quarterly earnings report?" Meredith asked, settling back. "No," Ainsley said, turning to face her. "Like why I really hired you." Meredith frowned slightly. "You hired me because I saved you $40 million on the Kovich deal." Ainsley smiled, a secret, guarded smile. He reached for his briefcase and pulled out a worn manila folder. He handed it to her. "Open it." Meredith opened the file. Inside was a resume. Her resume. But it was dated 4 years ago. It was her CV from Madrid, highlighting her work with the European Trade Commission and her master's distinction. There were notes in the margins in Ainsley's handwriting. Brilliant, tenacious, hire at all costs. "I don't understand," Meredith said, looking up at him. "You knew who I was?" "I was looking for a new general counsel 4 years ago," Ainsley confessed. "I saw your profile in an international legal journal. You were the rising star of Spanish corporate law. I told my headhunter to find you. They told me you had moved to New York to marry a businessman and had stopped practicing." Meredith felt a lump form in her throat. "I had. I tracked you for a while," Ainsley continued softly. "I knew you married Antonio. I knew he was a Vargas. I figured you were happy, living the high life. So I stopped looking. I didn't know he had cut you off. I didn't know you were working in my favorite restaurant until that night. You didn't recognize me at the table? Not at first. You were wearing that uniform. You were looking down. But when you spoke, when you started reciting the trade statutes," Ainsley shook his head. I knew I had finally found the lawyer I lost 4 years ago." Meredith looked at the file, then at the man sitting next to her. The narrative she had built in her head, that this was a lucky break, a Cinderella moment, shifted. It wasn't luck. It was talent. Her past work had echoed forward to save her future. "You didn't save me, Ainsley," Meredith realized aloud. "You just gave me the job I was supposed to have." "I gave you the pen," Ainsley corrected. "You wrote the story. I just wanted to be there to read it." The car slowed down. Meredith looked out the window and gasped. They weren't at the office. They were parked in front of the Obsidian Room. "Why are we here?" Meredith asked. "Because we have a reservation," Ainsley said, opening the door. "Table 9. Meredith hesitated. The last time she was here, she was invisible. "Come on," Ainsley offered his hand. "I hear the service is excellent." They walked inside. The restaurant was buzzing. Henri, the maitre d', looked up from his podium. When he saw Meredith, he didn't snap his fingers or point to the kitchen. He beamed. "Ms. Solis," Henri said, bowing slightly. "Mr. Brooks, your table is ready." They walked through the dining room, heads turned, not because of a scandal, but because they were the power couple of the New York logistics world. Meredith Solis, the CEO of the newly formed Solis Brooks Trust, and Ainsley Brooks. They sat at table 9, the same semi-private alcove. A young waiter approached. He looked nervous. He was fumbling with the corkscrew on a bottle of wine. I'm sorry, the waiter stammered, struggling with the foil. It's my first week. Ainsley looked at the waiter. He opened his mouth, perhaps to make a witty, impatient remark. Meredith reached out and touched Ainsley's hand. She looked at the waiter. "Take your time," Meredith said gently. "Turn the bottle, not the opener. And breathe. You're doing fine." The waiter looked at her, relieved. He managed to pop the cork. He poured the wine with a shaking hand, spilling a tiny drop on the tablecloth. He froze, terrified. Meredith didn't call the manager. She didn't demand a new cloth. She just smiled. "It adds character. Thank you." The waiter retreated, grateful. Ainsley raised his glass. The candlelight reflected in his blue eyes, which were no longer cold, but warm and full of admiration. "To the contract," Ainsley said softly. Meredith clinked her glass against his. "No," she said. "To the edit." They drank. The wine was a Chateau Latour 1982. It tasted like victory. It tasted like freedom. And for the first time in her life, Meredith Solis didn't worry about the bill. She knew she could pay it. Wow. Talk about a glow-up. From cleaning up crumbs to cleaning out the boardroom, Meredith Solis proved that your current situation is not your final destination. It wasn't just about a typo in a contract. It was about knowing your worth when the world tries to tell you you're worthless. If you enjoyed this story of revenge, redemption, and legal loopholes, please destroy that like button, just like Meredith destroyed the Vargas family. And here is a question for you guys in the comments. If you found out your boss was secretly a millionaire genius in disguise, would you treat them differently? Let me know down below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story. We have a new drama coming next week about a homeless man who, well, let's just say he owns the bank he sleeps in front of. You don't want to miss it. Thanks for watching. And remember, be careful who you laugh at. You might be working for them tomorrow. See you next time.